Let's get started with the game graphics themselves. I really enjoy that they are using the normal Lego style where everything is Lego bricks, Lego minifigures, models that are in real life are built by your own hands. You are now seeing them move around on screen and you instantly recognize them. You can basically see every brick on them, even in the graphics that this game has, which, let's be honest, they are pretty ancient, but you still recognize them and you see the models you know and love and build with your own hands. In my cases, I own many, maybe even all of the Rock Raider models. I can see them move around in game and it's really enjoyable. I also like that everything that is on the planet is distinct in its art style from the Lego figures and Lego bricks, because the rock monsters, the slimy slugs, cave walls, floors, lava, water, etc., it's not in Lego style, but even the tools your rock raiders use are Lego bricks. So that creates a very distinct style where you can instantly recognize this is not part of the alien planet. This is part of what the Rock Raiders bring there. And I really enjoy that. A bit about the story then. It's not really much of a branching story. Like, I think the literally only branching part is you can get a slightly different ending cutscene if you complete the game with all of the missions done, or maybe you need to do it 100%. I'm not entirely sure. I'm also not able to check what ending I got because, well, video glitches. But other than that, you have a nice story about being trapped around the orbit of an alien planet with no way to get home other than go teleport down to the planet, collect the energy crystals, need be steal them from the natives, and then you get back home. You have to deal with all of the problems that are on this unknown planet. You have to deal with the creatures on it that, of course, want to harvest and eat or drain the same energy crystals. But eventually you can overcome all of these difficulties and finally find your way back home. That is a nice, small story with a happy ending, just how children at the age of, well, basically how I was at the time, maybe between 8 and 15 years or something like that. That's how it should be for these children, and I really, really do like that. I still like that story, even though I'm much older now. Next up, unfortunately, is the biggest rock monster in the room, and that is this game's AI. I don't want to lose that many words over it. Let's just say pathing over rubble, even though right next to it there is a perfectly normal cave floor, pathing over little edges of a lava lake because they want to take a shortcut, pathing to distant objectives, even though technically they could get ore and energy crystals from a much closer source, waiting on stuff, just standing there, being unable to queue Rock Raider upgrades or even upgrade them on bulk, same with vehicles. Other bugs include crashes, especially in the later stages of the game. I think in the first 22 missions I had a single crash in this playthrough, and then in the later stages, due to repeated recording, repeated crashing, I think I played every mission about 2 or 3 times. Annoying, but it could be dealt with. Last bugs to talk about is the graphical glitches, which means that I'm not getting videos by default because they just don't work with emulation. Same with the translucent surfaces, because I really don't think that was part of the original game. That must be a bug through the emulation. Maybe some of the crashes are as well, but I kinda doubt it. I'm very certain that the Rock Raider is not broken even more by my emulation here. I would really be surprised at that. So, technically, everything, I guess, is possible. So next, let's talk a bit about the mission structure, because every mission, every single mission of the 25 has its own theme. The tutorials as well, but that's not that important. Of course, they are tutorials. Most of these missions are either focused about your starting situation or something that happens in game, or about a new mechanic being introduced, or maybe even an entirely different objective, such as getting to safety. The very first mission you are introduced to, Driller Knight, you don't start with a tool store, you start with 3 rock raiders out there trying to get to their tool store. It's not difficult, but it certainly is different than most of the other missions, because most of the other missions you are trying to build up a base. But then you have to deal with air, you have to deal with lava, you have to deal with enemies, you have to collect even more energy crystals with every sub-layer of depth. I think it increases by 5. So the missions don't really get that boring, even though if the game were longer, I think it would very quickly outstay its welcome. I also like that the mission mechanics are used well and they are meaningful in many of these missions. When they are introduced, they are not turned up to 11 or anything, but then they start to stack. And that's where it actually gets a bit more difficult. Like in the later stages, we didn't have the time to clear the cavern of monsters. We had to build up the base first, get our air supply, and then we could sweep and clear the cavern. I like that there is also sometimes different ways to play a mission. Because let's go to the one mission where we had the super symmetrical cave. There, I think there's 3 viable ways, maybe even more, to complete this mission. You can either just take the head-on approach, get into the main cavern, equip your rock raiders with lasers, or I guess in this case freeze guns, and take out all of the monsters, and then get the motherload of energy crystals at the back, and you're probably done with the mission much faster than I am. You can play the mission in the way that I did, where you simply go up to however many vehicles you could get, and then you just pull off Operation Energy Crystal Heist and have your fun with that way of playing it. Or you can even avoid all of the monsters. You just mine the side caverns, if you know the mission, and or you have geology, you can probably get away with not really disturbing too many rock raiders, only the ones that are sleeping in the side caverns. And then you are just gone without ever breaking into the main cavern. I like that, all of it, and I certainly enjoy it, though let's also be honest, it's not really big replayability. All of the missions are non-randomized. If you know where the energy crystals are, you can probably speedrun this in 10% of the time that I took. Maybe. I'm not entirely sure about that, but I certainly wouldn't put it past it. Speedrunners are some really crazy people. And I mean that in a good way. Next up, the game mechanics themselves. I like that the first hazard, I think, is also the most dangerous, because I think landslides overall are responsible for the most rock raiders teleported up. Landslides and dynamite. They are, as far as I can tell, for your rock raiders, the most dangerous things they are. Then we have the time pressure via air, but you can completely nullify that if you get your support station up in time. That said, the danger is still looming just over the corner, because if you use too many energy crystals or lose them, like I did, both of these things, then your air starts to deplete again. Next is the time pressure that is lava expanding, and you can't get rid of that as far as I know. You will simply need to deal with it by using more ore and using your rock raiders' time to build up power paths and repair whatever cave floor has been eroded. Next up is fighting various enemies. Well, I think we had fighting enemies before the lava expanding. But anyway, that sort of goes into the same time pressure category that is air. Fighting enemies is, I'm going to say, a bit suboptimal, because it again goes into rock raider AI, but at least there's various weapons you can use. You can choose between lethal and non-lethal combat. You can even put up base defenses to not really care all that much about rock monsters approaching. So there really is a variety of means how to deal with enemies. I also like that rock raider skills are persistent. They are saved along your save game, and that means that if you simply want to have rock raiders who are able to deal with a mission easily, then you simply train them up in the last few missions, and suddenly you start with geology and being able to repair stuff. Your rock raiders don't need an upgraded tool store to carry dynamite and blow up walls. They can carry more tools. They already have driving skills, though let's be honest, that's not much of a problem, because once you get the vehicles, you usually also have the infrastructure to train a driver or pilot or sailor. Other than that, I wish vehicles were also persistent, but unfortunately that's not part of the game, maybe by design, because dropping a load of upgraded vehicles might just be a tad overpowered. There certainly is something to say as well. It is very satisfying to go from a normal economy, where you have your rock raiders moving around the cavern floor, to going to your first small transport truck and just zooming around the cavern floor. And even the rubble. I've already talked for quite a while, so I don't want to go in depth about the enemy types. Let's just say that, surprisingly, I think the normal rock monsters are the strongest ones, simply because they don't have an element to counter them, and they even take less damage from pusher beams. So, as far as I can tell, for normal rock monsters, destroying your buildings is just about the biggest enemy threat the game has. The other enemy that can hurt you in a big way is the slimy slugs, but often they don't do irreparable damage because you can either just collect more energy crystals or even recharge them. What they can do is they can lose your mission if you lose all of your air. So that is actually something you need to deal with. You can't just ignore them. The small monsters, which are spawned if a big monster dies, I think, as well as the small spiders, they just exist to make your rock raiders slip on them and then they're gone. So they really aren't much of a threat, they just cost a bit of time. What costs a lot more time are the bats that seemingly break your rock raider AI, and that's actually a big problem. They can also sort of stun lock your rock raiders in a corner, similar to how you stun lock enemies with pusher beams in a corner. But unfortunately, that kind of can get pretty bad. And the fact that they appear to me to break AI, because I think in the 2 missions where they were present in good numbers is where we were having difficulties collecting energy crystals. That's actually a problem. So that is something I wish they had fixed, but maybe they never caught it. Finally, some miscellaneous stuff, like for example, there was a bit of a lack of music, but I only really felt that way in retrospect because I was, well, not even noticing it, so I guess it couldn't have been that big of a point. There also is mods you can install. I will put a link in the description and probably on screen right now. Many of these mods focus on, as far as I can tell, quality of life. Some apparently also give additional content. I'm not entirely sure what mods do for this game. I've never gone into them. But as far as I can tell, there is an active modding community, and if you want to play this game, but better, you can certainly check that out. Also, there is what I guess I could call a spiritual remake, spiritual fan-made successor remake. I don't know what to call it, which is called Manic Miners. I will link the Discord in the description as well, and you can check that out if you want to play an even better sort of version of this game. A lot more modern, a lot better looking, and I think that is absolutely amazing. I may in the future play that as well, but I think I'm more than filled up on Rock Raiders right now with all of the repeated playthroughs, so I probably won't be revisiting this game or its successors and variants and mods for a long time, but that doesn't mean that I didn't have fun with this. So what would I rank this game as? I certainly would give it a lot worse of a ranking than if you had asked me 15 years ago, because 15 years ago this was the bee's knees for me, and I had loads and loads of fun. I think I can settle for a 60% score or 3 out of 5 stars or whatever you want to call it, simply because the AI is so very bad. The missions, the game design, even the style of graphics they went for, even though, let's be honest, it's a very old game, it doesn't look that well, in modern standards that is. I think that all fit. But the AI from your Rock Raiders and the bugs, and sometimes apparently even the crashes, they just take away from what this game is. Also, maybe that there's a lot of, like, I may be simply putting the nostalgia against realism right now. It's difficult to judge. Maybe others would have given it a different score, but from what I looked up, 60% about is also what people gave it back in the day. So I think I'm fairly honest with my rating and not going too much in either direction. If you have stayed until this point, thank you very much for listening to my babbling. I will most likely make more playthroughs in the future. I have a game that I want to showcase, and next time it's going to be a lot more modern than Tron or Lego Rock Raiders, games which are both well over 20 years at this point. Lego Rock Raiders bordering on 25 years actually. Next up will be something quite a bit more modern. I think we're talking about 2000 plus. Not entirely sure. I will have to look it up. But if you want to continue watching my videos, I certainly will enjoy it. And thank you very much for watching and listening. Hope to see you next time.